Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Lauren Cielo from Golden Rose Psychic Services.
And I'm Crystal Heinemann from Crystal Sunshine Psychic Services,
And this is the Metaphysical Q&A podcast.
where we make metaphysics crystal clear.
And golden delicious.
Metaphysical QA is a subscription-based podcast that will shift the way each human views their experiences that they're having here on this earth plane.
That's right. Crystal and I are professional clairvoyant healers and teachers, and we think we can explain anything that all of us humans experience daily in easily understood metaphysical terms.
And our viewers and listeners supply the questions. That's you all. So thank you. We're so grateful. If you'd like to submit a question, please visit our website, which is right here, metaphysicalqa.com, or please visit our Facebook page, Metaphysical Q&A. And if we use your question in one of our upcoming podcasts, one of us will offer you a free reading.
That's right. Well, what are our 3 questions for this episode, Crystal?
Okay, so we've got 3 questions for today, Dr. Lauren, and here we go. So question number 1 comes from Kathleen in Louisiana. Hello, Kathleen. And she says, my mother passed at 92 and it didn't look easy at all. How can we make our deaths easier? And then question number 2 comes from Ramona in Salt Lake City. Thanks, Ramona, for your question. And Ramona asks, what are the metaphysical consequences of suicide? Very important question for today's times, for sure. So thank you for that, Ramona. All right, and question number 3 comes from Mark in Pittsburgh. Thank you, Mark. I used to live in Pittsburgh. And your question is, what happens to us when we die? So how about we call this episode, Dr. Lauren, the Metaphysics of Death?
Ooh, okay. And that's kind of an interesting topic, especially for the culture that Crystal and I and all of you live in. Death, we kind of have a hands-off relationship with death in our culture. So I think these topics, these questions would be a great opportunity for us to maybe demystify something that we're all going to go through before, as we leave this planet. So let's do it.
Okay, so question number 1 comes from Kathleen in Louisiana. And Kathleen says, my mother passed away at 92 and it didn't seem easy at all. How can we make our deaths easier?
All right. Well, let's get right down to it, Kathleen. Thanks for your question. I had the same experience with my grandmother. She died at 95, and I would say being at her deathbed was challenging. I think maybe the first thing that might help all of us understand those kind of long, lingering deaths, if we could call it that, is that while your loved one is laying there, the more uncomfortable the physical body becomes, the less likely the soul is in the body still. So a lot of times, if I have a client who, has a person that's at hospice or maybe on their deathbed, I'll always remind them that while you may be comforting their body, while the body's laying there, their soul is probably really up in the corner of the room watching all of it. And if you've ever seen a near-death experience recalled by people, they will say, I was above my body looking down. So again, you may want to, ease your loved one's body, but if you want to talk to them, you might look up in the corners of the room while they're passing. That might be the first thing. So if it looks like the body's in a lot of pain, they're not in there. And you might think of it this way too. If you've ever had a really, really high fever, you might remember you weren't really in your body. You don't really know what's going on, I guess is the point. So in regards to how you can make our individual deaths easier, I would suggest looking at the topic from time to time. What I do is I live in a beast. Lauren Cielo has a lot of chi. Let's put it that way. So I talk to Lauren a lot about when all of my contracts are done and my soul's ready to go home, that this beast of burden can just lay down and die. So I've already been working on how I would like my animal to make that transition. So maybe you might think somewhere along the lines, and of course, you might not do it the way Crystal and I might, doing energy work, but at least think of your death from time to time. If nothing else, just that might get you prepared.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and I was taking a peek at you, Kathleen, and really, I was wanting to tune into your mother, and I wanted to tune into because I know that your main concern was that it was hard on her, that it was very painful, and it didn't really seem easy. So I wanted to look into that energy of when your mom was passing, and the energy that I read was, and it's so funny. As soon as I saw your mom hovering above her body, that's when Dr. Lauren said they're usually in the corner of the room. Because what she showed me was it looked like she was in a nice little room. It almost looks like it was hospice care or something. And she was right over here. And I think you have two other siblings because I saw three different energies and I saw you right here and then two others. So whether there was three people in the room with your mother over here. And the way that the energy that she showed me that I read it was just pure unconditional love. So I didn't read like angst or pain or conflict or anything like that in her space. It was really like the purest amount of like unconditional love energy. And it actually filled me with goosebumps because it felt like such a beautiful space that she was in. And I pulled up, and I asked her about her soul contracts and her timing and all of that. And she said, "Oh, honey, I was ready. Oh, honey, I was ready. I was just really the way that she was above her body here. She was really just working, the energy of unconditional love with you and your two other siblings. And she was ready." So, however, you may think that it was a lot, that it was difficult on her. She was. And I asked the percentage about like how much she was actually in her body during that time. And the percentage that I got was 89% outside of her body. So she was here. And so you felt that you of course felt your connection with her, like she was in the room because she was just right above her body, but she was out of her body 89% of the time. And like I said, the energy was just pure unconditional love. And so she really, it was a beautiful transition for her. So I hope that that puts you at ease, Kathleen, because I know that's something that's inevitable in all of our spaces, and especially losing a parent as well. So, and I know that we want the best for them. So I just want you to know that the energy was just unconditional love, and there wasn't any pain that I read in her space. So I hope that answers your question, Kathleen. And one more thing, Kathleen, I want to add is I actually have a audio workshop that's in my website. You can visit at crystalsunshinepsychicservices.com in my audio downloadable classes. And I actually have a workshop on making death easier. So if you wanted to learn a little bit more and maybe do some actual energy work that you can do in your life and you can share it with others, please visit my website and there you go.
All right, we're up to question number 2, Crystal.
I'm ready.
This one comes from Ramona in Salt Lake City, and she asks, "What are the metaphysical consequences of suicide?"
Ooh, I love this question. Thanks so much, Ramona. Especially in the U.S. here, we've had a lot of suicides, and actually the rate has been going up. So thank you so much for your question there. And I'm really actually looking forward to looking this up myself. So, what I'm getting is that the metaphysical consequences of suicide, there's a few reasons. I mean, there's a few consequences, let me say. The first one really depends on the soul's intention upon leaving their body and actually choosing to leave their body. Now, there's been several cultures that actually they believe it's part of their culture to have like a self-assisted suicide. Once they reach a certain age, then it's okay to have like a self-assisted suicide to actually leave their body. So it all kind of depends on your intention. Are you in a space of where it's like, what, I'm spiritually grown. I have like lived through my contracts here on earth. Like I feel like I have lived a full life. I feel complete, where it's like you really are in your physical body, and then your soul is just communicating with you, and you're like, you know what? I've done everything that I came here to do. I feel complete. I don't know what the next step is for me to be. And you're just ready to go. See, now that would be with intention. Maybe your soul is ready to go, but your body, maybe it's living in pain, maybe it's in a coma, maybe it's just in a bed, and it's like, what's your intention behind it? Now, if there is something to where it's like you're living in so much angst and it's just too emotionally painful, physically painful, to be in this body, and you still have a lot more to do in this life, and you just abruptly decide that, what, life is too painful. I can't face what's right in front of me. My contracts are too hard for me to even deal with. And I am just going to leave this body, right? So those are two separate intentions. There's one where it's like, you know what? I feel satisfied with my life. I'm at peace. I'm ready to leave this physical body. Or there's that intention of like, I can't live through these contracts. They are too hard. I'm just going to sign out. I'm signing out. I'm checking out, right? So two separate things. So there's going to be two separate consequences of that, right? So in the first one, let's talk about like when you just really feel complete and you just feel at peace, right? You just know you're at peace, but your physical body just is still here, right? There's a beautiful thing called self-assisted suicide. And that is something where your soul's contracts have already been completed. And so the consequences really aren't going to be anything metaphysically. Your soul's ready to go. It's completed everything it has wanted to complete here on earth. So the consequence is just the same as if you naturally gave up your physical body. But then let's go back to the other one where it's like, you're living in so much angst and it's just too painful to be here on earth. So you want to leave this physical body. Now, there are some consequences to that because you have a lot of soul contracts that haven't been completed, right? You've just decided that these soul contracts are too difficult. They're too painful. Like, I don't want to look at them. I'm just going to leave. Well, you're leaving a lot of soul contracts on the table, essentially. And so when you do choose to come back in body and your soul, right, that's the eternal part of you, it will inevitably choose another body to come back, and all of those contracts, all of those experiences that your soul came to hopefully complete in the life that you you decided to leave this body, you're going to have to come back. Your soul's going to have to come back and live through all of that again. It may not be the exact same experiences, but it's going to be the same lessons, maybe in different formats. So your soul's going to have to come back and live through those soul contracts, the ones that it decided it was too painful to initially go on. So you'll have to come back. So that's a consequence to it. So you'll have to come back and re-experience that. Then there's another thing on top of that. If your soul, right, the eternal flame of you, the eternal part of you is constantly choosing bodies to reincarnate, and then, because that's a gift in itself, being, picking a body and actually living through this life here on earth. But if your soul comes in and chooses a body and then repeatedly decides suicide, right? Like every life, it's a pattern. Every life, it decides that, I'm bowing out, too hard, getting out of here, killing this body off, right? And you constantly are choosing suicide to end your life, your physical life. Your soul is going to get something very interesting that I know Dr. Lauren and I have only read in very, very, very rare cases. You're going to get a cosmic cop guide. Now, what this is someone that is going to help you not give up on this life, not give up this body. It's going to assist you in not choosing suicide and actually fulfilling your soul's contract and your soul's time here. So I know I've only read one in someone's face once, and I think Lauren's probably the same. It's very, very rare. But if you do continually decide to choose a body that constantly exits via suicide, you'll get a thing called a cosmic cup, which will hopefully end that pattern for you. So those are the consequences. So it all depends on attention and your intention for the most part. So I hope that answers your question. Do you have anything to contribute, Dr. Lauren?
Excellent. I do. So, Ramona, I was taking a peek at your soul and all the times it's died. And I was trying to see what kind of dyer you are. And so what I did is I looked at um, how many times you'd lived in a culture where it's totally socially acceptable and maybe even expected of the elders to choose their own day of death, and they have a big celebration and all that kind of stuff. And when I peeked at it, you had one lifetime as a man where it almost seemed that that's what you did. Like, like kind of the way in Egypt they had the mummifiers, the priests that were trained in mummification. Well, you were kind of like that. And that's what you did. You kind of, it's kind of a caricature, really, when I look at the image. You look like a witch doctor, like a traditional witch doctor might look. But that's what your job was to create the celebrations, help pick the days, even create the herbal tonics that would help others pass. So while I was trying to look at your passing, you actually showed me a lifetime where you were the passer, where you actually helped the others pass over. So I would think that in those lifetimes where our elders decided when they would pass, those were cultures that really valued the wisdom of elders. And so I would think in this lifetime, Ramona, that as you get older and older and start to process your death, that, I don't think you need to worry. If you thought that you might at some point decide to do self-assisted suicide, I think you'd be fine and you could trust your decision, especially if you're pulling information from that lifetime where, that was the healer that you were. You were a transitional healer. So I don't think you personally need to worry. So I hope that helps, whatever you decide.
Okay, so moving on to question number 3. This comes from Mark in Pittsburgh. And Mark asks, what happens to us when we die?
Oh, that.
The thing that we all do.
It's like, Mark, why didn't you ask, who am I and why am I here? Right now.
Yep.
So I think Crystal and I actually do know what happens when we die, as best as a Homo sapien can. And I'll tell you how we know first, and then I'll tell you what we found out. We read the dead. So a client might come in, somebody's recently passed, and they want to, give a healing, find out how they are. Maybe they have questions about, where the keys to the security box are. I don't know, whatever their questions are. And so, Crystal and I peek in on someone who's passed over, and in doing that over enough, I call them data points. Having done that enough, you start to be able to form a hypothesis on what's going on as you talk to them. So there's really stages that we go through. First of all, if we've had a traumatic death, or if we don't even know we're dead, I call that waking up dead. Like maybe I hate to say it, please forgive me, but like a bug on the windshield death, where you don't even see it coming. You're here 1 minute and boom, you're gone the next. Maybe dying in your sleep, maybe dying in surgery, where you're already unconscious. So maybe, deaths that were very difficult and took a long time and were, traumatic. Well, those kind of passings, you might be ushered into like an ER, if you thought of it that way, where there's lots of healers there that help you orientate and realize that your incarnation's over. Okay, no, not everyone goes in there. Okay, now the next step after that is really reevaluating your last incarnation. You might still be present with your loved ones. You might visit them often. And you're still very much your personality. And then the next step after you kind of rehashed your life is you take that life and you integrate it into all of your lives. And I'll tell you really good, maybe it's because my people come from Oklahoma, but everybody, all the women quilt. So when I first saw that, that's what Anki Yaya showed me, was this image of a quilt. The patch that's your life, your last life, you evaluate that. And once you're done, then you put that patch into the whole quilt and integrate it. And then, of course, you start to realize there's a piece missing. So you start looking at creating your next life. So if you talk to a dead person while they're still evaluating this life, like I mentioned, they're very much them. And they, in all likelihood, are visiting a lot to their, your people that are still left on earth. When they start to integrate into all of their lives, their personality changes. They may become much wiser than you might have known them on earth. And that's true of my grandmother. She was not a wise 95-year-old. And I always figured, if you're going to live 95 years, you better get wise. Well, she's starting to sound a lot more wiser to me. And so then finally, once the contracts are created for the next incarnation, once that happens, then usually the dead person won't come to a reading. They're not that person anymore. They're incarnated in Australia in a female form, and you knew them in another country as male, let's say. So once the soul is incarnated, they won't come to a reading at all. So I hope that helps. And again, the way we found that out, and I say this a lot, the way that we know the answers to most of these questions is because we read you guys and you tell us. So that's what I got.
I love that. And that's so right. So right. We're always so thankful for who we read, because we'll always talk and we'll be like, oh my gosh, I learned so much from my client today. And you're our best teachers. So yeah. So Mark, what I wanted to do was actually take a peek at you. And I know it may sound silly, but I wanted to take a peek at you to see how well you die for the most part, right? It's something that we all do. It's the inevitable. The one thing we all know is that this physical body is going to die at some point. So, I mean, since it's something we all do, I mean, why not take a peek at you to see how well you do it? So, the funny thing, Mark, and I hope that you can find the humor in this if you cannot, but I guess we end up getting a sense of humor after how many dead people that we do read. But anyways, the way that you showed me was that you were like, oh, I'm on it. Like, you use a lot of mental energy. And I would think that you're probably a very intelligent man, because the way that you showed me was that it's very easy for you to pass, and meaning that whatever circumstance, the physical world, whatever circumstance that you choose to die, you are so super genius. Your higher self is so super genius that you just kind of pop out of body. You're like, oh, I got it. And you like you use a lot of mental energy, and your soul it just knows that this earth plane that we're living here is just a picture, right? It's just an image. It's really not real. And your soul is very comfortable going to the real world. It's very comfortable going home when you die. So it's almost as if your soul shows like a little bit of a sigh of relief. And it's like, okay, good. I left that body. I shed that body. Okay, on to the real work. And the way that you show me is like, it's almost like you have like a white lab coat on, and you're like a doctor up there, and your soul is just like, okay, great. Let's get all of our books out. Okay, how was that? You turn into complete like study of like, okay, this is what I did on this last lifetime. Okay, great. Okay, I did this. And it's almost like you're scoring yourself with your team, because you have a lot of trusted guides around you that work with you to make your transition so easy. And they're so excited to see you. And it's like you go through this whole evaluation process, but you're really self-evaluating yourself with your team behind you. So it's like you really are on top of it. And right away you decide what you're going to do next, like what you're going to do. So you use a lot of mental energy once you shed this physical body. And it's almost like, it's like a science experiment. Isn't that funny? It's almost like you're like, oh, okay, I did this. Okay, this is what I have to learn. Okay, let's do this. Let's like start picking a body. All right, everyone up for this. Let's start working our soul contracts. So you're very mental with it. So I would take a gamble that you're probably not too fearful of dying, because your soul knows that that is your real home, per se. So I hope that helps, Mark. And thank you for showing me that. That was really interesting. And I love reading what the soul wants to communicate, right? So it almost allows us to not be so scared of, actually dying in this physical form, right? To know that this is what our higher self, our soul is doing, like once we pass, right? So thanks for showing that to us, Mark. I hope it answers your question. So of course, if you did hear your question here, one of us read your question, would you please visit our website at www.metaphysicalqa.com, and would you please click on the free reading button and claim your free reading from one of us?
Excellent. All right, Crystal, do you think we've done it again?
Well, Dr. Lauren, I think we've done it yet again, where we are making metaphysics crystal clear
and golden delicious.
Would you please visit our website, www.metaphysicalqa.com, and subscribe or submit your questions. We'd love to answer them, and we'd love to see your subscription in there. And if you're interested in anything that I'm doing outside of MQA, Metaphysical QA, which isn't much because, we love doing this, is please visit my website at www.crystalsunshinepsychicservices.com. And we do a lot. I do readings and teaching.
And check me out on the internet, laurencielo.com and goldenrosepsychic.com.
It's been fun.
Please hang up and try again.